A few months back, and this was back in around March, we did actually get a brand new start deck for Vyrgilla in the stand-up deck set. Not stand-up, sorry. What was it called? The Skyride one, right? The one for Skyride. And basically, I was ragging on Vyrgilla and talking about it as a whole, as well as the state of Dragon Empire, that, I just think Dragon Empire is in a really bad spot right now. A lot has changed since then, and by a lot, I mean one card. They released one card in Festival around the week I did the video, which was Vyrgilla Rewrite Form Alfknights. And this card, frankly, does bring a lot of implications for this deck. Firstly, one, it is a new support card, so that basically means I have to talk about it. And two, it really does give a lot of questions as well as answers about the design space for Vyrgilla that, Daimbo Sensei, Nek, Kidani, whoever the hell's working on it, is really thinking about. And today I want to talk about this deck as a whole. I will be giving English translations for Alfknights, don't worry, but I just want to talk about this deck in its entirety and ask the big question that a lot of you actually seem to respond to in my comment section, which is Vyrgilla a doomed deck? What is the state of Dragon Empire? Will we get that Dragon Empire rant video? Well, today you can treat it as that. Today I plan to talk about all this, and it's a long one, so sit in and get comfortable. Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm Season4 here. Today I am back to talk about Vyrgilla, Lido Form, Alfknights in Festival Booster 2025. The name really rolls off the tongue in Japanese, I tell you, because it's linked to obviously the King of Knights, Alfred, whose video I will be doing soon, don't worry, but my money is kind of tight right now, so I'm gonna need a bit more time. But basically, in the manga, semi-spoiler by the name, as you can tell, and by the flavor text, Vyrgilla stops being a tsundere and he's like, you know what, I love you, my boyfriend, and finally becomes Alfknights and decides to fight alongside Zero once again. Again, it's a mini arc in Skyride, so do pick up the manga. It is freaking insane. I really do love it. But not only did they surprise drop this card in the middle of Festival for some strange reason I'll never understand, they did this right after they released the start deck, right? So generally, we know that Bushiroad now likes to print triple rares right after they drop a starter product. The idea is you buy the starter product, you buy into the deck, and then you buy a triple rare to support it. But Vyrgilla is no start deck, right? Vyrgilla has existed for over a year now, but the fact that they're doing this right now feels very weird. But let's talk about this deck in its entirety and then talk about Alfknights. So I'm gonna start this video off with a recap of my previous Vyrgilla video with the link in the description. So in case I, quote something wrong or say something a bit inaccurate, you can just check it out for yourself. The previous criticisms I have were, pretty easy. First of all, it felt like Vyrgilla had a very layered gameplay that didn't really support each other, right? On turn 2, you would generally use stuff like your Latifa to combo in with stuff like your wonderful old finisher and the first shining card of the manga, that would be Stardust Blade, right? And then after that, following that in the Koro manga set of that year for the Japanese, or Stardust Blade if you're an English player, they actually gave us more cards, right? So they actually introduced the rest of, Vyrgilla's gang, and that would be Ezra and Fanfare, and of course the little Cosmo, love him to death. And then after that, they printed a card like Variance Ray Dragon, which I have a whole video on him, on ragging on him on why I totally hated this guy to death. You can check that video link in the description as well, but I will address him as well. So again, this is like a huge summary of all of Vyrgilla thus far. So that is basically it. And then in the start deck, we basically got 3 new cards. Blazing Star Cross as the finisher back in chapter 4 or 5 that they introduced. No, I think it's chapter 6 or 7. We got N-Wing, who was originally a card from Suina, and then we had Flare Cosmo. The issue I had with these 3 is that they pushed a new gameplay with Blazing Star Cross that involved a Thunder Strike style synergy, right? So Blazing Star Cross triggers when you have 3 or more cards in your opponent's bind, or if you Persona Ride. While N-Wing does help you Persona Ride, while N-Wing does help you bind and Vyrgilla does help you bind, the problem is the rest of the deck doesn't really do that for some reason. So you were forced to play only 2 cards with a bind synergy. And I know what some people are saying, but honest, you can just buy the new Dragon Empire Ace unit, in Festival. Yeah, I hate to break it to you, that guy doesn't bind either. Again, you can check out the Ace unit video link in the description as well. it was just really bad, right? Like, people were just throwing darts to the literal wall, just praying something sticks, and it didn't. None of it did. And to top it all off, they printed Flare Cosmo, who is literally just a slightly worse original Cosmo. Although he does have a Maple skill, which is nice, but it was so weirdly conditional and overcosted that, you know, it just seemed really bad. Like, frankly, I just had so much anger towards the card design during the start deck, despite the fact that I love the product. I absolutely adore it. Like, I just hated the design so much. I just kept asking myself, you know, God, why are you doing this? What is up? Why are they making these cards so weirdly shit and conditional, and that it doesn't make sense? So that has been the summary of all my criticism for Vyrgilla so far. Again, if you've watched my videos beforehand, you kind of would know this, or if you've had the displeasure of talking to me personally, you would know that as well. But what exactly does Alfknights do to solve the problem? Does he solve any problems, or does he just make new ones? Is he just a nuisance? Again, now I will try and edit in. This is the skill for Alfknights. So what does he do? Alfknights has a lot of text that basically says very little, but you'll see what I mean when I read it. So he has a new keyword called rewrite, right? So basically, because it's called Rewrite the Star Vyrgilla, finally they are paying off this word where, you know, he can rewrite himself, which I actually do like a lot. I think that's actually a pretty cool thing that they are finally using the whole, why is it a whole point of imagination in rewriting yourself? They're finally playing it up. And then there's Vyrgilla rewrite from Alfknights. So rewrite from your hand as an X skill. If your opponent's Vanguard is great, you're greater. Cost, bind a Vyrgilla, rewrite the Star Vyrgilla on the Vanguard circle. So you bind this one, the original Vyrgilla. Of course, if you have the other print of him, like, you know, this one, you can just do that. I just use my Nintendo print because I like it very much. So basically, you bind the original from your Vanguard circle, and then you can write this card as stand during your main phase and perform all of the following. At the end of the turn, you have to write the card bound as cost to rest. Okay, so what does it do? You have two skills. When you write, you search your deck or drop for one Galaxian race and call it your Vanguard circle. Search your deck or drop for an ultimate skill or Hisatsu card. Reveal it, put it in the hand, and if you have searched your deck for this ability, you shuffle the deck. Okay, the second skill is, until the end of the turn, this unit gets auto on Vanguard circle once per turn. Okay, so this is not like the OG Vyrgilla, which was not once per turn. So if you put Drop Veda, you can trigger it twice. This one is only once per turn. And that is, when this unit attacks, count +1, stand all of your front row rear guards, this unit gets drive +1 until the end of that battle. And also, all of your front row units gain 5,000 power for each card with the same name as this unit in your soul. So, I'm going to leave the text at the right hand side if I'm not mistaken. So, let's talk about Vyrgilla. There is a lot of text, but what is it even saying? Let's break down this skill once and for all. First and foremost, it is really nice, you know, that it gives you an Omni Search for both a Finishing Blow, Hisatsu card, as well as a Galaxian. Now, why does it matter? In previous times, I've criticized that Fanfare, who is a Galaxian, is very difficult to search because he's grade 3, right? The deck has an innate grade 2 strategy, especially because of cards like Shooting Star Vyrgilla, who can toolbox out grade 2s. But Fanfare is a grade 3, so he was never accessible, and he felt very awkward in the deck. Now with Alfknights, you can actually search out Fanfare immediately. It is really good. It does impact quite a fair bit, the fact that they do that. And to make matters better, they do actually allow you to search for one Hisatsu or Finishing Blow. So you can choose to search for either Stardust Blade or Blazing Star Cross and just add it to the hand. Again, this is really good because previously we had to rely on stuff like Justina or stuff like Inductance Dragon to really search the deck for your orders, and now you just have a Vanguard who can just search it out from almost anywhere. The only problem, of course, still is if you damage check it, you know, you gotta have to search for other copies, which you generally will have. So it's not too big of a deal, right? And generally that's just all pluses around for this guy. And the fact that he is an X skill, as I've mentioned previously, you can actually still use your original Vyrgilla's X skill first to bring back a Galaxian, to bring back a grade 2 from your drop. So that can be Ezra, because he's grade 2. Then after that, you use the rewrite, go into your Alfknights, and then from Alfknights you can then just search your Fanfare, and Fanfare will trigger on Ezra, and then you get the power, and then you can clap hands, and your basic combo is set up, right? So in terms of that regard, in terms of you being able to set up your basic strategy of Vyrgilla when it first came out, which is of course Ezra, Fanfare, and Stardust Blade, I will say Alfknights has passed that test 100%. I would say that this really solidifies the bottom line of the deck, which makes it pretty good. And of course the fact that it can still multi-attack with its 5 attacks now instead of 4 attacks, it is pretty good. However, there are some problems with Alfknights, and that is basically not that good. The problems with Alfknights is as follows. First and foremost, the entire skill is dependent of your opponent's Vanguard being grade 3 or greater, which means going first, this card is just absolutely useless, right? You just cannot use it. You can't search just like one target or one stand. You don't get it. It's just a brick in your hand, right? And that means going first, you are forced to rely on the general game plan that Vyrgilla has always had, which is still on, Rewrite the Star Vyrgilla and your Ezra, Fanfare, Stardust Blade, etc., etc. Alfknights only helps you in terms of assuring the base bottom line on turn 3 going second or turn 4, which by then can be considered too late for some people, which is a small issue. Secondly, and more dastardly, he doesn't actually help the new game plan, right? The new game plan with Blazing Star Cross, N-Wing, and Flare Cosmo, it absolutely does not help this at all. Sure, it can guarantee consistency to Flare Cosmo because it can call any Galaxian from the deck or drop, but it doesn't have a bind synergy at all, which is what these two cards really push, right? So you still need to trigger the original Vanguard's bind skill twice, or Persona right, and then you can still get access to your Blazing Star Cross. Again, I know we can't have everything, I understand that, but like I would have preferred if they consolidated the old and the new cards from 2024 and 2025 together with Alfknights. Right now, it just feels like they really solidified the bottom line with Alfknights in terms of the 2024 cards, but whoever designed Alfknights completely forgot the 2025 cards, because all this, the bind synergy, everything is untouched. You still have to do everything yourself, whereas Alfknights only serves to direct one layer of gameplay rather than the second. That's why I've been layering the cards like this. I'm trying to show you like it's a layered gameplay. But okay, so I'll get the skill out of the way there. Now, let's talk about directions. What directions does this new card, Alfknights, bring? How exactly can we build Alfknights? Because there has been quite a fair bit of resurgence for this deck in terms of people's public interest, not to mention, he is a frontliner triple rare, so a lot of people are interested in looking at the deck. Well, we do have many questions to ask when it comes to Alfknights, right? Like I mentioned, Alfknights really serves the original turn 3 strategy really well in terms of the original, Fanfare, Ezra, and Stardust Blade, but he doesn't exactly help the new game plan of Blazing Star Cross and N-Wing. So how exactly do we still build this deck? Well, there are still multiple ways. First and foremost, you can still include the options of, for example, Latifah, as well as your Stardust Blade, right? This is generally still your turn 2 game plan that you can still use by playing these at large numbers each to open them up, and then it can trigger your Shooting Star Vyrgilla, which can be a 28k 2 crit beater on turn 2. Again, this is really effective, but the downside with this game plan is that it takes up a lot of space. You are dedicating 4 each, which while I do thoroughly enjoy it, it is very high roll and reminiscent of the early days of Vyrgilla, and will actually lead you to breaking or just losing certain parts if your opponent is either smart enough or lucky enough. So that's just never a good thing. The second way to build this deck is to focus on what some of the Japanese people are doing, and I've tried this myself as well. You can use multiple grade 3 searches that Dragon Empire has, such as Summit Flare Dragon, who I have covered before on this channel, and Nilmin. Nilmin is basically a generic Burning Horn Dragon that Overlord has. You basically have another one that's generic now. Again, these yes, you can use these to search out your Alfknights, you can use these to search out, you know, your Persona rights. And that being said, that does help your Blazing Star Cross in a way, because your Blazing Star Cross does have the alternate condition of needing you to Persona right instead of Thunderstrike 3. But again, that just feels really weird. Like, if you opt for this route of Vyrgilla, you are gonna run into some very weird problems, like, you know, now playing a whole bunch of cards that just search grade 3s into your hand and that's it. Like, that was never what this deck has been about. They don't contribute to early aggression, they don't really contribute to your tight game either. They just give you the grade 3 hand. So if you find it, cool. If you don't find it, lame. And then again, having Alfknights as a go second card only really rubs the salt in. Like, if you go first and start searching for Alfknights, what is the point? You may not even live till turn 4 to play them both. And it just really sucks altogether. But again, some may argue, yeah, sure, it's a you know, it's a balancing mechanism. You kind of need this around so that you can, you know, so that you can afford, you know, to have a card that literally gives you 2 cards from your deck or drop to your hand. I agree to an extent. I do believe, yes, it is a good balancing, but this is a very weird balancing where Vyrgilla has always been a very weird one-trick pony kind of deck, where Vyrgilla has been designed from the ground up to play like, no offense, junk, where you are just supposed to rush people to death and try and beat. And now we are playing this like proxy overlord. I don't know, it just feels really weird. Like, if you want to talk about farming grade 3s, like, why not just play Felty Rosa or something? Why play this deck? It just seems really weird altogether, the amount of different directions people bring. And not to mention, with Shooting Star Vyrgilla, a lot of people will play grade 2 tech options, right? As I previously mentioned, you can play the Ace unit in Vyrgilla. Should you? No, but you can. You can play, you know, stuff like your Warcry. People even tag in stuff like this guy, Variant Ray, who I have slightly more renewed appreciation for, especially in the light of Artisaria. I do appreciate it a little bit better, but there are some matchups where he's just completely useless as well, right? But people will still try to tag grade 2 cards in because you can toolbox it, right? It's part of the right line, it's part of the deck. You can do that. And it leads to very confusing deck building. Like, there's just a lot of ways to cover Vyrgilla. I could go through at least 3 to 4 different lists, but that's frankly not what I want to do in this video. I wanted to talk about just Alfknights. I just wanted to talk about this card and talk about its implications. So the big question is, does this change everything for Vyrgilla, right? That's the whole reason why. So does it change? And the answer is yes, absolutely. I think the fact that first and foremost we have a card like Vyrgilla Rewrite from Alfknights is pretty insane. That Bushiroad is willing to step back after printing relatively poorer support and print a card that can do consistency net for a whole bunch of different targets we didn't think possible. It is pretty good. The fact that, you know, he gets a drive back after you write from hand, the fact that you can search out 2 cards that do have synergy with each other, it does help a lot. It is a pretty strong card on paper, but there are still sufficient weaknesses such as it being blind go second, as well as it, you know, not having any innate search mechanism besides playing a whole bunch of Dragonfire generics and clashing with deck space of your previously established rush gameplay. It does lead to a lot of questions. It is still pretty confusing. That being said though, Alfknights has given me confidence in Dragonfire once again. I do believe that right now, this is the kind of support I want to see. Like, this is a good direction to be in. Like, you know, this is the kind of support where they really give you a relatively fair upgrade or a fair support card that does tackle previously established questions. I did stress so much on Fanfare being unsearchable. They search him out now. I did stress about how the orders have very weird timings, and if you just don't open Justin up, you die. They've solved that now. It is good. This is the right direction. You want them to push it. And in my next video, which I will be talking about Dragonfire again from Festival in the next video, I do talk about how, you know, them printing more fair and more balanced Dragonfire cards that do tackle the main questions and cruxes of decks is the way to go. Instead of just pushing power levels to 11 like freaking Sagra, this is how you should create support. And frankly, Alfknights does fulfill that for me. As much as I have a lot of negative things to say about Alfknights, I do have an equal amount of positive things to say about him. Which is new, because I'm frankly so used to ragging on one of my favorite decks ever because of its weird design. But to conclude, I want to say that I am a fan of Alfknights. I really am excited to see him in the manga. I think, so far the illustrations are just really damn amazing, and I just cannot wait to see him be played. The fact that people like Notae are playing this card, it does show that there is something there, as much as it is pretty obscure. But I do want to think that, with enough testing, with enough people talking about this deck, labbing and innovating about this deck, going through the different directions that I mentioned previously, I want to believe that people can solve this deck. This is definitely looking much more solvable than it was in March, when your support just couldn't have a baseline at all. This is a one card baseline. It is pretty good, but it doesn't solve every problem of Vyrgilla, but it solves a large net of problems, which is good because Vyrgilla is a deck built from the ground up, from literal commons and rares, from a booster set, right? So like at this point, the fact that you can get support like this is pretty damn insane. And really, that's all I have to say. Thank you all so much for watching. Again, I know I did promise a Dragon Empire rant video, but this is as close as I'll do it, right? Because when they revealed Alfknights, when they revealed Sibyl, when they revealed, the Festival 2025 support for Corti Blaze as well as Zlance, I really was excited. I was like, wow, this is the Dragon Empire I've missed. This is the Dragon Empire I want to go back to. And they're doing it, and I'm very grateful. In the next video on this channel, I will be covering that double rare I mentioned previously, Zlance. I will be talking about it. I will be talking about why it is important for the Zlance deck and why it really does breathe whole new life into a deck that was virtually dead. So yeah, please do check it out. I do hope that you guys do enjoy the Dragon Empire content. Again, I'm really sorry for those of you who did ask me for other decks. Frankly, I am pretty stretched monetarily, so I do try here and there. Like, I know I have multiple people ask me for Vyrgilla Dragon. I have like most of the parts. I just don't really have the time to really talk about it. But, if I do get a chance, probably I will. Then again, Vyrgilla was also another example of the bad Dragon Empire I wasn't a fan of. And this, frankly, is so much better. This Zlance, Sibyl, that is the Dragon Empire I want to really show people. This is the Dragon Empire that I want to be remembered for 2025.